On a quiet coastal town in Australia, a body washes up on the shore at dawn. No ID, no shoes, just a blood-stained note clutched in the dead man's hand. The truth dies tonight. Locals whisper it's connected to an unsolved case from decades ago. The police call it suicide. But one stubborn journalist believes it's murder, and the deeper she digs, the more she realizes the killer is still out there, watching. The body on the shore. The first light of dawn spilled across the sea, turning the waves a coppery red. Seagulls wheeled overhead, their cries sharp against the silence of the sleepy coastal town of Seabridge. Most of the town was still tucked away in bed, blinds drawn, kettles yet to boil. But on the beach, something stirred. Tommy Hargreaves, a fisherman in his 60s, was hauling his nets when he saw it. At first, he thought it was driftwood, tossed up by the tide. But as the current dragged the shape closer to the shore, his gut twisted. Driftwood didn't have arms. Driftwood didn't bleed. He dropped the net, heart thumping, and waded forward. The body rolled with the waves, face down, clothing torn. The salt water lapped at pale skin. Tommy froze when he noticed the man's hand clenched tight around a crumpled scrap of paper. It was smeared with blood, words scrawled across it in jagged handwriting. "The truth dies tonight." Tommy stumbled back, breath catching in his throat. This wasn't just a drunk who'd fallen into the water. This was something darker. Within the hour, the beach was crawling with police tape, uniforms, and murmuring locals pressing in at the edges, eager for gossip. Detective Sergeant Claire Watson stood at the center, her boots digging into the sand. Sharp-eyed, with hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, she scanned the scene. Male, late 40s, maybe early 50s, muttered the pathologist beside her, squatting near the body. Bruising on the ribs, no shoes, and this note. He held it up carefully in a plastic sleeve. Claire's jaw tightened. "You think he wrote it?" The pathologist shrugged. "Doesn't look like it. The grip's stiff, like it was forced into his hand before he went under." The crowd whispered louder as the body was zipped into a black bag. "Who is he?" someone called out. "Another drifter," said another. But Claire's instincts prickled. Something about the scene was staged, too deliberate, too neat. As she turned to leave, she noticed a young woman standing apart from the crowd, arms crossed, eyes locked on the body bag being wheeled away. Unlike the others, she wasn't gossiping. She wasn't curious. She looked angry. Claire approached. "You know him?" The woman's jaw worked. "Not personally, but I know what this town does when the past washes back up." "Meaning?" The woman's gaze was steady. "That man died because of something buried here years ago. And trust me, Detective, Seabridge will try to bury it again." Before Claire could ask more, the woman turned on her heel and walked away, sand kicking up behind her. Claire felt the weight of the note burning in her pocket. The truth dies tonight. And for the first time in months, she wondered if she'd just stepped into something far bigger than a routine investigation. Old wounds. The police station in Seabridge was a squat, weather-beaten building, sitting a block back from the esplanade. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee mixed with the tang of salt air drifting through half-open windows. Detective Sergeant Claire Watson dropped the evidence bag on her desk. The note glared up at her, the words jagged and uneven, written in black ink. "The truth dies tonight." She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. She'd been in homicide long enough to know a staged death when she saw one. The bruises on the body, the absence of shoes, the forced note, it reeked of theater. Somebody wanted this body found, and somebody wanted a message delivered. Her partner, Constable Nick Reardon, strolled in with 2 takeaway coffees. "Morning, boss. Or should I say, sleepless morning." He placed one on her desk. "Cheers," Claire muttered, sipping. Fingerprint analysis came back already. Our John Doe is identified, Michael Trent, 48. Worked as a contractor in Sydney. No criminal record. Clean as a whistle. Claire frowned. "So what was he doing in Seabridge? He doesn't exactly fit the local drifter profile." Nick hesitated, pulling a file from under his arm. "There's more. He grew up here, left town 20 years ago. Parents still live inland in a nursing home." That caught Claire's attention. People who left Seabridge rarely came back. When they did, it was for funerals or unfinished business. "Unfinished business," Claire muttered. Nick raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Nothing. Just a hunch." By afternoon, the town was buzzing. Seabridge thrived on gossip, and the appearance of a body was fuel for every cafe, pub, and hair salon. People spoke in lowered voices, but the rumors spread like bushfire. Some said Michael Trent had debts. Others whispered about a feud from his youth. One name kept floating through the chatter: the Blackfin case. It was an old ghost of Seabridge, the unsolved disappearance of a teenage girl, Amelia Blackfin, who vanished one stormy night 22 years ago. She'd been last seen leaving a bonfire party near the cliffs. No body was ever found. No charges laid. Just endless speculation and a family torn apart. Claire remembered the file well. It was one of those cases detectives kept tucked in the back of their minds, a constant reminder that justice sometimes slipped through the cracks. That evening, Claire visited the local paper, the Seabridge Chronicle. She wanted to track down the young woman who had spoken to her on the beach. Inside the cramped office, cluttered with yellowing headlines and the rattle of an old printer, she found her. A woman in her late 20s, auburn hair tied in a messy ponytail, tapping furiously at her laptop. "Let me guess," Claire said, stepping in. "You're the one who thinks the town's covering something up." The woman looked up, unimpressed. "Detective Watson. Thought you'd come sniffing." "Name? Ellie Blackfin." Claire paused. The surname hit like a punch. "You're Amelia's sister." Ellie's eyes hardened. "Half-sister. Born 3 years after she vanished. Different father, but I grew up in her shadow. The case that defined this town, the one no one talks about anymore." "And you think Michael Trent's death is connected?" Ellie leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Not think. No. Michael was at that bonfire the night Amelia disappeared. He was one of the last people to see her alive. Everyone here pretends it was just teenage foolishness, a tragedy with no culprit. But my family never got closure. And now Michael turns up dead, clutching a note about truth?" Claire exhaled slowly. The journalist wasn't guessing. She had teeth in this story. Ellie continued, her voice sharp. "Seabridge has a rotten core, detective. The kind that smiles in daylight and hides its filth at night. You can try and bury the past, but eventually it claws back up." Claire studied her. Brave, stubborn, reckless. That much was clear. The kind of person who got answers, but also the kind who got themselves killed. "Leave the investigation to us, Ellie," Claire said. Ellie's laugh was dry. "If I'd left it to the police 20 years ago, I wouldn't even know my sister's name. I'll find the truth, with or without you." As Claire left the Chronicle office, the last light of the sun dipped behind the cliffs. The waves pounded harder against the shore, like a warning. In her gut, Claire felt the town's old wounds opening. Michael Trent's death wasn't just a murder, it was a message. Shadows of the past. The next morning, gray clouds rolled in from the ocean, pressing heavy over Seabridge. Detective Claire Watson stood in the morgue, staring at Michael Trent's lifeless form under the harsh white light. Dr. Karen Hughes, the pathologist, adjusted her gloves. Cause of death, drowning. But the bruises on his ribs? Fresh, likely from blunt force. Someone knocked the wind out of him before he went under. Claire folded her arms. So not an accident. And the note? Planted. Ink matches a brand sold locally. Papers from a notepad you'd find at the Seabridge Hotel. I'd say someone wanted you chasing ghosts. Claire's jaw tightened. Ghosts were already circling. By midday, she was sitting in the faded lounge of the Seabridge Hotel, a relic of the town's fishing heyday. The air smelled of stale beer and fried chips. Locals hunched over pints, murmuring low. Claire's badge was enough to silence the room. The barmaid, a wiry woman with deep lines around her eyes, leaned across the counter. "Michael Trent? Aye, I saw him. Checked in 2 nights ago. Alone. Looked over his shoulder a lot. Nervous type." "Did he meet anyone?" Claire asked. The barmaid hesitated. "He had a drink with someone. Local. Name you'd know." She lowered her voice. "Jacko Firth." Claire's stomach sank. Jacko Firth, once the town's golden boy, captain of the footy team, son of the mayor. Now a man in his late 40s with a reputation for short tempers and long debts. He'd been questioned in Amelia Blackfin's disappearance 2 decades ago, but never charged. His alibi, friends swearing he'd been with them at the bonfire, had held. Still, his name had clung to the case like smoke. That evening, Claire found Ellie Blackfin sitting on the cliffs overlooking the restless sea, notebook balanced on her knees. "You're wasting your time," Claire said, approaching. Ellie didn't turn. "Funny, my sister said the same thing the night she vanished. Everyone told her she was wasting time trying to prove Jacko Firth was a bully and worse." Claire exhaled. You think Jacko killed Amelia? Ellie's eyes burned. I think Jacko got away with something. And now Michael Trent turns up dead after meeting him? That's not coincidence. That's a chain reaction. She ripped a page from her notebook and handed it over. Scribbled notes, names, arrows connecting people. At the center, Jacko Firth. Trent knew something, Ellie said. Something he carried for 20 years. Maybe he finally wanted to speak. Maybe someone decided to silence him. Claire scanned the page. Alongside Jacko's name were 3 others. Polly Dean, Benny Marsh, Tom O'Reilly. All locals. All boys who'd been at the bonfire the night Amelia disappeared. The same 4 names had haunted the original case file. Claire paid Jacko a visit the next day. His house sat on the edge of town, a sprawling property paid for by his father's money. Jacko himself was broad-shouldered, but the years had softened him, belly straining against his shirt. His eyes, though, were still sharp. Predatory. Detective, he drawled, leaning on his doorframe. To what do I owe the pleasure? Michael Trent, Claire said flatly. You met him at the pub. Jacko smirked. Had a beer, sure. Old mate from back in the day. Didn't know he was back in town until he walked in. What did you talk about? Footy, weather, old times. Nothing worth writing down. Claire studied him. He turned up dead that same night. Drowned. Bruises on his ribs. You expect me to believe you know nothing? Jacko's smirk widened. Detective, if I went around punching every bloke I had a beer with, this town be empty. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. Careful where you dig. Some things are better left buried. That night, Claire sat in her car overlooking the harbor, the note still haunting her pocket. The truth dies tonight. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He wasn't the only one. Meet me at the old jetty. Midnight. Claire's heart thudded. She knew 2 things. 1, someone out there was scared enough to risk contacting her. 2, midnight at the jetty was the perfect setup for a trap. Still, she grabbed her torch, slipped her sidearm into its holster, and drove into the dark. The waves crashed louder than usual. The jetty stretched like a crooked finger into the Black Sea. And waiting at the end, shivering in a hooded jacket, was Benny Marsh, one of the 4 names from that old bonfire. His face was pale, eyes darting. I can't keep it in anymore, he whispered as Claire approached. Michael wasn't supposed to die, he just wanted to tell. They promised no one would get hurt. Who promised, Benny? Claire pressed. Before he could answer, footsteps thudded on the timber behind her. Claire spun, too late. A shadow surged forward. Then came the crack of wood, the flash of pain, and Benny's scream ripping through the night. The jetty swallowed it whole. The jetty betrayal. The blow knocked Claire sideways. Her torch clattered across the timbers, rolling to the edge where the sea frothed below. The world spun in fragments. Boots thudding, Benny screaming, the crack of fists on flesh. Through the haze, she caught a glimpse of 2 figures. One dragging Benny by the collar, the other kicking her service pistol into the dark water. Detective Watson, a low voice mocked. You just can't resist sniffing around, can you? She struggled to rise, head pounding. Her vision cleared just enough to see the man holding Benny, Polly Dean. The years hadn't been kind, face pocked, belly heavy, but his grip was vicious. The second man she couldn't see clearly. Hood up, voice distorted. Please. Benny gasped. I didn't tell her anything. The hooded man's voice was cold. You already did. Then, without hesitation, he shoved Benny off the jetty. Claire lunged forward, but her ribs screamed in protest. The splash echoed, followed by frantic thrashing. Benny's arms flailed, his voice shrill with terror. Help me! But the hooded man didn't move. Neither did Polly. They just watched. Claire staggered to the edge, ripping off her jacket. She dove. The water was a shock of icy black. The current pulled hard, dragging her down. Benny's hands flailed wildly, dragging her with him in panic. She gritted her teeth, fought to steady him, and forced his head above the surface. Kick! Damn it! Kick! She yelled, shoving him toward the pylons. By the time they clung to the slime-coated timber, the jetty above was empty. Their attackers were gone. Back at the station, Benny sat shivering in a blanket, his eyes wide with terror. Claire nursed bruised ribs, anger simmering hot beneath her skin. Who were they? She demanded. Benny's voice trembled. Polly Dean. The other, I didn't see. They wear masks now. Always. We made a pact after Amelia, to stay quiet, to forget. But Michael, he wanted to talk. He said the truth had to come out before it killed us, and now he's dead. Claire leaned in. What truth, Benny? His jaw quivered. That Amelia didn't just vanish, she was taken. We all knew who did it. We covered for him. Lied to the cops. Swore he was with us at the fire. Claire's chest tightened. You're saying Jacko Firth? Benny's eyes darted. I didn't say his name, but yes, it was him. Or at least, he was the one who dragged her away. The words hung heavy in the room. Claire drove Ellie to the cliffs that night. The wind whipped hard, the sea below crashing against jagged rocks. Ellie's face was pale but determined. Benny's right, Ellie said quietly. My mum always believed Jacko had something to do with Amelia's disappearance, but no one would cross the mayor's son. The town protected him. They still do. Claire's mind churned. A cover-up. An entire town complicit in silence. Michael Trent had broken that silence, and someone silenced him for good. Benny's testimony could reopen the case, Claire said. Ellie shook her head. Not if he ends up like Michael. You saw what they tried to do. The truth hit Claire then. This wasn't just a cold case. It was an ongoing conspiracy, one with roots that reached deep into Seabridge's power. The next day, she hauled Paulie Dean into the station. He sat across the table, arms folded, smirk plastered on his face. You've got nothing, detective, he said. Benny's a drunk. His word won't hold up. And me? I was at home last night. With who? Claire shot back. Paulie leaned forward. My wife. Who'll back me? Every time. He grinned wider. You're chasing shadows. Amelia's gone. Trent's gone. You keep digging, and maybe you'll be next. Claire stared at him, unflinching. Threats won't shut me up. Paulie chuckled. It's not a threat, love. It's how this town works. Seabridge doesn't like outsiders, even when they wear badges. That evening, Ellie showed up at Claire's flat, uninvited, clutching a box of old cassette tapes. These were my dad's, she said. He recorded everything, local gossip, council meetings, even pub chatter. He was paranoid, said the town had secrets. Most of it's rubbish. But she pulled one out, labeled Bonfire 2003. Claire slid it into her dusty tape player. Static. Then the sound of crackling fire, laughter, distant waves. And then, voices. Michael Trent's voice, clear, nervous. Jacko, don't. She's had enough. Let her go. Another voice, rougher, slurred with drink. Mind your own business, Trent. She wanted to come, didn't you, Amelia? A girl's voice, muffled, frightened. Stop. Please, just stop. The tape clicked off. Ellie's hands trembled. That's it. Proof. Jacko was there. Proof he dragged Amelia away. Claire's stomach turned. The case wasn't just old tragedy anymore. It was living proof of Seabridge's rot. And now she had something solid. But proof had a way of getting people killed. The town erupts. The tape sat on Claire's desk like a ticking bomb. Proof, finally. Proof that Amelia Blackfin hadn't simply vanished into the night. Proof Jacko Firth had dragged her away. But proof was dangerous in Seabridge. Chain of custody, detective? Nick reminded her as he slid into the chair opposite. If this tape gets out before the lab authenticates it, Jacko's lawyer will rip it to shreds. Claire rubbed her temples. And if it doesn't get out, we'll lose Benny. Or Ellie. Or both. Jacko already knows we're onto him. He'll move fast. Nick's voice lowered. So what do we do? Claire stared at the tape. She thought about Amelia's muffled cries. About Michael Trent's bruised ribs. About Benny nearly drowning under the jetty. We move faster. Ellie Blackfin didn't wait. By morning, a copy of the tape was already uploaded on the Seabridge Chronicle's website. Headlines splashed bold across the page. Exclusive, secret recording ties Jacko Firth to Amelia Blackfin's last night. The town exploded. In the cafe, whispers turned into shouts. On the esplanade, locals pointed fingers, old wounds ripped open. Some cursed Ellie for dragging skeletons out of the closet. Others muttered that everyone had known for years but were too scared to say it aloud. By afternoon, a crowd had gathered outside the Firth property, angry, restless, chanting Amelia's name. The mayor, Jacko's father, appeared on the balcony, face red with fury. This is slander, he bellowed. A witch hunt. My son is innocent. But inside, Jacko paced like a caged animal. His phone buzzed nonstop, old mates, lawyers, and one number that chilled him. Calm down, a voice rasped on the line. It's under control. Just keep your head down. Jacko slammed the phone shut. His head wasn't down, it was burning. That night, Ellie's office at the Chronicle was ransacked. Papers strewn, computers smashed, cassette tapes ripped apart. The place smelled of petrol. Someone had tried and failed to set it alight before the fire fizzled. Claire stood among the wreckage, fists clenched. They're scared, Ellie said, voice trembling but defiant. That means we're close. Or it means you're next, Claire snapped. You've painted a target on your back, Ellie. You can't just… A crash outside cut her off. They sprinted into the street. A ute roared past, windows down, someone hurling a brick. It smashed through the Chronicle's front window, skidding across the floor. Claire picked it up. Taped to the brick was a note. Stop digging, or you'll join Amelia. The next morning, Benny Marsh was gone. His flat was empty, his phone smashed in the sink. Neighbors said a black ute had pulled up late at night. Benny left with 2 men, looking pale as death. Bloody hell, Nick muttered, scanning the scene. If he's talking 6 feet under by now. Claire's stomach churned. First, Michael Trent, now Benny. One by one, the bonfire boys were being silenced. And Jacko? He hadn't been seen since the protests outside his house. Ellie refused to back down. She pushed harder, digging through council records, old footy rosters, forgotten police statements. Claire watched her with reluctant respect. Stubborn, reckless, but sharp. Then Ellie dropped something new on the desk. Look at this. She spread out old photographs of the bonfire party, snapped by teenagers with disposable cameras. Most were blurred, kids posing, beer bottles raised. But in the corner of one image, barely visible, a girl with long dark hair, Amelia Blackfin. And beside her, half turned toward the lens, an arm gripping her wrist. Jacko Firth. The photo was grainy but damning. Claire's chest tightened. Between the tape and the photo, the case wasn't just whispers anymore. It was evidence. Enough to drag Jacko in, but dragging him in meant drawing blood. That evening, as Claire prepared the arrest warrant, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Static. Then a voice, hoarse, panicked. Detective, it's Benny. Claire's grip tightened. Where are you? They've got me. Shed near the old cannery. They know I talked. Please. His voice broke. They're gonna finish it tonight. The line went dead. Claire's heart hammered. It was a trap. It had to be. But if Benny was alive, she couldn't leave him. She grabbed her jacket, her gun, and the warrant. Jacko Firth wasn't just a suspect anymore. He was prey. Final reckoning. The night pressed heavy as Detective Claire Watson's tires crunched over the gravel road leading to the old Seabridge cannery. The place had been abandoned for years, its rusted tin walls groaning in the wind, windows gaping like broken teeth. Claire killed the headlights and sat in the dark, heart thudding. She could still hear Benny's voice crackling through the phone. They're going to finish it tonight. It reeked of a trap. But she had no choice. She checked her pistol, slid out of the car, and moved quietly through the shadows. The shed door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, silence, then a muffled cry. Detective? Benny Marsh was tied to a chair, face swollen, blood streaking his shirt. His eyes were wild. You shouldn't have come. Claire sprinted forward, fumbling with the ropes, when footsteps echoed behind her. She spun. Jacko Firth stood in the doorway, a crowbar dangling from his hand. Behind him, Polly Dean and another man, Tom O'Reilly, the last of the bonfire boys. Well, Jacko drawled. The city cop wants to play hero. Claire raised her gun. Drop the crowbar, Jacko. It's over. Jacko laughed, low and cold. Over? You've got nothing. A tape? A blurry photo? That's gossip. Amelia's gone. No body, no case. Ellie's voice cut through the dark. That's where you're wrong. She stepped from the shadows, recorder in hand, its red light blinking. Jacko's smirk faltered. You shouldn't be here, girl. Ellie's voice shook, but her words were steel. You killed my sister, and you let this town protect you, but tonight, everyone's gonna hear it. Jacko sneered. Careful, you don't know what you're poking at. Benny suddenly shouted, voice raw. Tell her, Jacko! Tell her what you did that night! The shed rang with silence. Claire's finger tightened on the trigger. Jacko's jaw worked. His eyes flicked between Benny, Ellie, and Claire. Then something cracked inside him. She wasn't supposed to die, he growled. She wouldn't stop screaming, wouldn't stop fighting me. I just wanted to scare her, show her who was in charge. But Trent, bloody Trent, he got in the way. Said he'd tell, so we made sure he kept his mouth shut. And when he came back, his eyes flared. We shut him up again. The words spilled out like poison. Ellie gasped, tears burning her eyes. Claire's pulse roared in her ears. It was the confession they needed, but the danger wasn't over. Polly moved first, lunging at Claire. The gunshot cracked, echoing off metal walls. Polly crumpled, clutching his shoulder, howling in pain. Tom bolted for the door, disappearing into the night. Jacko roared, swinging the crowbar. Claire ducked, the metal grazing her ribs, white-hot pain shooting through her side. She fired again. The blast slammed Jacko backwards into the wall, crowbar clattering to the ground. He slumped, breath rattling, eyes wide. "You'll never beat this town," he rasped. "They'll bury it, like they always do." Then his head lolled, and he went still. By dawn, the cannery was swarming with uniforms. Polly was cuffed, Benny loaded into an ambulance, and Tom hunted by patrols. Jacko's body lay zipped in a black bag, the sound of the zipper final, like a closing chapter. Ellie stood on the pier outside, staring at the horizon. Claire joined her, bruised and bone-tired. "It's done," Claire said softly. Ellie's eyes glistened. "No, it's just begun. Jacko's gone. But the town, they let him get away with it for 20 years. They let Amelia disappear. That rot doesn't die with him." Claire nodded. She knew Ellie was right. Justice wasn't just about catching a killer, it was about forcing a town to face its sins. Ellie pressed the recorder into Claire's hand. "You've got the confession? Don't let them bury it again." Claire looked at the blinking red light, then at the restless sea. For the first time since arriving in Seabridge, she felt something crack open. Not peace, not closure, but truth. And the truth, once spoken, never really dies. Epilogue. 1 year later, Seabridge was quieter now. The Firth family had left, their mansion sold to developers. Polly Dean was serving time. Tom O'Reilly was still missing, a ghost on the wind. The town still whispered about Amelia Blackfin. But now, they said her name with sorrow, not silence. A memorial stood by the cliffs, her photo, candles, flowers. Ellie visited often, notebook in hand, her articles reshaping the town's history, one column at a time. Detective Claire Watson sat on the esplanade, sipping coffee, watching gulls swoop low. She'd been offered transfers back to the city, promotions even, but she stayed. Seabridge wasn't finished with her. The sea rolled on, restless as ever, and for the first time, the town didn't look away.